needed decisions, and the critical actors who are also guaranteed tenure that we can expect them to protect and defend democracy. Strengthening national institutions requires a multi-pronged approach. One is engagement with strategic decision makers who are able to provide critical diagnosis of the challenges and prefer options for remedial or mitigatory actions. Two is support to capacity development, including where appropriate legal reforms, training, and in some instances, budgetary support to operational activities. The second point I make is a robust engagement with political parties. Political parties are the king and queen makers, yet they are often neglected and marginalized in the quest to strengthen democracy. There must be a deliberate effort to court political parties and engage them meaningfully. This aligns closely with the recommendation by the President yesterday for building relationships, because it is only when there is a relationship with the leader of the largest opposition party that we can meaningfully engage him or her to support transformations, or when there is a crisis, come to the negotiating table. The third is the promotion of civic engagement and political participation. Participation must go beyond casting a ballot at periodic elections. Civic education, unfortunately, is dying in many countries on the continent. Whilst the institutions may exist, they tend to be severely under-resourced and under-capacitated. So beyond what may be in textbooks, we need a rigorous reintroduction of civic education into the curricula of our schools. I must be quick to add compliance and accountability are gagged, democracy suffers. Today, one of the biggest threats to democracy is misinformation and disinformation. Without the guaranteed space for vibrant engagement, including of dissent and opposition, other platforms will be created to publish and encourage untruths and half-truths that are detrimental to democracy. I see you looking at me, so I'm going to jump straight to how the AU Peace Fund can help. The AU Peace Fund essentially has three windows, windows 1, 2, and 3. And looking at it, I think that window 1 is our best option. Window 1 provides us with early warning and preventive diplomacy and peacemaking. The AU will need to invest heavily in prevention, and in so doing, we must be innovative and creative. Preventive diplomacy must go beyond diplomatic visits to include concrete actions. The provisions of Window 1 must be innovatively interpreted to include supporting democracy architectures and infrastructures in member states as a way of preventing conflicts. There is a need to strengthen the capacity of the governance division of the department to augment existing capacities. I must say here that it is quite unfortunate that in a period when the continent is confronted with such critical challenges, the Commission is having to do more with so little. The State of Governance report and the various empirically generated studies by African and non-African institutions, such as the Mo Ibrahim Foundation and the Afrobarometer, to mention just two, provides a good starting point for engagement. We now know which countries have stable democracies, which ones are flawed, and which ones are struggling. We need tailor-made interventions. We need to understand the peculiar needs of each country to be able to offer pragmatic support. I think we have a good appreciation of the challenges. It may be helpful to now limit meetings and workshops and engage in hand-holding and coaching. And so the final point that I would like to make is that the Peace Fund can provide catalytic support to the Commission to enable quick action. But beyond quick action, we need staying power. Safeguarding democracy is not an event. It cannot be a one-off or a series of meetings. If the AU must support states to safeguard democracy, they must be able to stay in for the long haul. We need to ensure that this is made possible by providing the needed resources for the fund. We need to ensure that the processes for assessing the fund is sufficiently agile, nimble.
Very much, Dr. Linda. You stayed within your time allocation. Thanks for the information that you just shared about the need for the AU to be emboldened to play its role effectively in terms of administering what is supposed to be given through the Peace Fund. So I would like to now call on Ms. Khalud Baguri, IAP North Africa. You also have 5 minutes, but I will add 1 minute to you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. Very happy to join this panel specifically because I can see that there is a diversity in the contributions. And I decided to make my contribution focused on the perspective from a youth lens so that there is a kind of insight and contribution to this discussion. As young Africans, we stand at a critical junction in our continent's democratic journeys, where the collective voice and action hold immense potential to shape the future of governance and peace. Now, yesterday we heard a presentation about AFSIT, and I would like to start by highlighting the role of such initiatives in shaping the position of governance and democracy in our continent. AFSIT's role, for example, in providing specialized training in security and intelligence to the youth is not just an investment in their skills, but also it's a testament to the pivotal role that we provide and we play in safeguarding democratic values. Because we get to see and hear recently that our generation is kind of passive, but we are not just a passive observer. We're not problem makers. We're not here just to get these trainings, but also to add our expertise and our contributions. So it's kind of an acknowledgement of our active participation as well in leveraging also the technological advancement for the transparent governance and the inclusive decision-making processes. So this fusion of the digital tools, the data analytics, the social media platforms, they only do not amplify the voices, but they also strengthen the resilience of the democratic processes against the emergent threats. So I believe that such initiatives, they must reach out to the young people. They must be kind of an ownership. It must speak to them. Because yes, we know that there are existing initiatives, very powerful ones, but we must pay attention to this major constituency that is of the youth, because they're also citizens of these countries. And if we're speaking about tackling or mitigating the risks or the threats in governance and peace and security, we must also take into account that there is a group that we must also speak to them. And such initiatives must speak to their mind and must be led and owned by them. So in this case, we must confront the reality of challenges. We must acknowledge what is going in terms of political exclusion, to the security vulnerabilities, which actually impact our full participation as young people. In a way or another, such threats, they do frustrate the capacity of young people when there is issues of accessibility, when there are issues of capacity building. So in the sense that we feel blocked in case we do not feel like these issues which impact us are being tackled. For the AU Peace Fund, for example, the support for young people can be, or for young people's youth-led initiatives, can be a beacon of hope. And in this sense, I would like to recognize how the AU Peace Fund provided the fund to Ethiopia, which is actually a positive sign. But this contribution must consider having a quota for young people or for youth-led initiatives, which can also be a way forward to supporting youth-led initiatives and sustaining peace and security in the continent, and can be a starting point for democratic transitions and inclusive participation of young people. Yet, I think despite this positive element, it requires strategic alignment with the grassroots movements and the community-driven solutions to ensure the lasting impact. So if we want to sustain initiatives and if we want to make long-lasting impact, we need to make sure we have the inclusivity element in it. Another point I would like to highlight is the cross-border cooperation in our pursuit of the sustainable peace. And here I would like to speak about the AU's role in fostering regional collaboration as well, and the conflict prevention mechanisms that exist, which are indispensable, but still there is work to do. They must be complemented by youth-led approaches, which prioritize inclusivity, gender equality, and the empowerment of the marginalized voices. Because in such advanced era of technologies, we still have gaps, especially in rural areas, in the vulnerable communities, young people with no access to information, they don't know that such initiatives exist, we must acknowledge their existence, and we must make sure that such initiatives also reach out to them. So our journey towards safeguarding democracy is not without obstacles, that is very obvious, but it is our resilience and innovative spirit, the continuous commitment that we have as young people to democratic ideals, it will guide us forward. So I think my call here is to seize this opportunity and harness the power of knowledge and the collective action that we as young people and the stakeholders have to build a continent and a home where democracy thrives and peace prevails. And yes, it sounds too ideal to speak about the young people and inviting them, but I think it's today about time that we go beyond the policies and go beyond the initiatives and start speaking to a conversation where young people and the stakeholders can meet at some point and have this intergenerational vision and come together to help them also contribute. So I'll stop here, and of course we can go further later. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Baguri. I think, sorry. You said it well, and I think it further adds to the voices of the two young men that we saw yesterday. That call to action, collective action by young people, for young people, a call for inclusion and inclusivity couldn't be said better. So thank you very much. We will have the opportunity to deep dive into the exchange when we get to the questions and comments. But I would like to also now call on Jana Nkube, who would also be given 5 minutes for your submission. But since I'm sitting next to you, I'll add you 1 minute.
I gave him a look because of the favoritism. Good morning, Your Excellencies, colleagues. I too would like to observe the protocols already established for this forum. Thank you, Chair, for the extra minute. I'm really proud to be sitting on a panel of powerful women. And when I looked at the topic, sustainable solutions, and looked at all the topics from yesterday it was analysis, why are we like this, da-da-da-da. When it comes to solutions, Commissioner Bankole and our director, Madam Patience, decided to find women to come and start establishing solutions. And as you can see, we are rising to the challenge this morning. I think the first thing for me to say is the challenge for this continent is not that we do not know, we do not understand, we have no information. I think Linda has put it very well. There are a lot of mechanisms, there are a lot of reports, there are a lot of institutions, including our own African Union organs and institutions that collect, analyze data and information. The question is there willingness to learn from the past? Is there willingness to adjust the presence? And is there enough care for the future of this continent in a world right now that is so ridden with conflict, quagmire, and where more and more we don't matter so much? We are getting to the bottom of the agenda of global issues and dynamics. So that's the question I think that is for this conference to answer as we go through the deliberations today. For me, the first point I want to really emphasize, Chair, is I think in a way we've got it a little bit wrong by looking at this issue of unconstitutional government and looking and focusing so much on the militarized, on the military coups that of course are a plague we do not want on this continent. I actually read the ACDEC again this morning, and beyond just the military coups, it also emphasizes dynamics around elections, and of course emphasizes the mischievous changes of constitutions that we sometimes see happen on the continent. And when we have promoted and prioritized and focused on this unconstitutional change of government. I think yesterday Dr. Kabele emphasized it right for me, that we should not just be looking at the militarized changes only. I think the right way to look at this issue is the right to democratic governance for the African people. If we start from there, is enough being done to secure, safeguard, ensure democratic governance for the African people? So for me, that, of course, points out the fact that it's not just the military or armed actors' actions that remove governments from power, but it's also, honestly, safeguarding constitutions from ruling elites. Because for me, that's the crux of the matter. And we have done a lot as Africa, and I really want to applaud the leadership of the African Union and regional and economic communities on elections. But the truth of the matter is a lot of the population of this continent no longer trust or believe in the results of our elections. They've become rituals where somebody gets declared and announced as a winner. But where there is not a sense from the population that this is the one that we have chosen to lead us. And that's problematic, and it needs to be addressed. And attached to this issue, Chair, is if we go to root causes, yeah, we'll talk about poverty and so forth and so on. But for me, the root cause is this principle of sovereignty, which limits the ability even of these regional mechanisms, like including the African Union, to really actively and robustly engage with a member state when there's mischief going on, even prior to military coups. I think my sister Cynthia yesterday raised it very well to say, why are now people who are committing military coups sounding more attractive in certain populations than so-called democratically elected leaders? That's a heavy question that we need to be answering. And so for me, I think that's one big issue. How the boundaries and limitations that have been held onto under this principle of sovereignty limit the ability to hold each other to account. And yet, for the population, when you say, for me, I come from the Southern Africa region, we have SADC. When you say African Union, it's like when I married this man that I love, I realized it was not just about him and me. It was also about our families. And recently, one of my sisters came back home because of a challenge in her family. And as families, her husband's family, our family, we sat down to address the matter. This is what we do on this continent. This is what the African Union ought to be, a forum where we can relate the ability to, when there is a problem, we sit down, we address robustly, and we support, handhold, as Linda said, so that we are restoring what is good in that situation. The second point I want to raise, I come from civil society, and one of the challenges I think we have is where we are not using all our available resources amongst our populations. I think states are important and key, but I think we are better off when all hands are on deck. Yesterday, Commissioner Bankole said, hey, the ship is going through very turbulent waters. Some of us might even say the ship looks like it's sinking. It ought to be all hands on deck. And I'm really proud that I think I've seen, even through the Peace and Security Commission, a willingness to engage with civil society. I think it's really right to even acknowledge Her Excellency the Ambassador of Ghana, who hosted the first civil society forum with the Peace and Security Council 2 years ago, working closely with ECOSOC. We have our body of ECOSOC that is rightly engaging and coordinating civil society on this continent. Can we see a much more robust engagement, not annual forums only? Honestly, Peace and Security Council, I hereby politely request here this morning that when you're even having your briefings or consultations and meetings on country situations, even a day before, you can have an informal consultation with civil society and hear from the people in the conflict situations and those working on those conflict situations, the proposals that they too have. I think that could be something that actually can be integrated into your way of operating and allowing yourselves to be informed too by civil society. And then the last point I want to make is, for me, I think Africa doesn't need any new mechanisms. I think we have some of the most robust mechanisms, most robust institutions. When I speak globally, I actually challenge people from any part of the world and say, show me a much more progressive protocol on women's rights, for instance, or even when you look at what we have in our instruments across the board. Our challenge is implementation. We are not implementing, we're not utilizing that which we ourselves have actually instituted. Yesterday there was a talk of APRIM. This morning there already has been talk, even yesterday on the panel of the WISE. Why is it not being deployed when we already are assessing and seeing that a situation is not going the way that it ought to go? So I would really like to again put on the table that we have articulated these frameworks and put in place these institutions. It's time to actually deploy them now and make them work for the continent so that the people of Africa can enjoy democratic governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my sister Jana. I think we still have some time because Dagmar Witt was supposed to join us, so I allowed both of you or all of you to have 1 or 2 minutes each. But if she does make it due to traffic considerations, we'll still give her the floor. Excellencies, we've had some three different but complementary perspectives